Mogherini, High Representative. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me first of all say that, yes, I'm trying to indicate some signs of hope, because I'm really convinced that if we do not identify the reasons for hope on the way ahead, it is very difficult to work on the change that is needed to get to a better place. But, indeed, the way is going to be difficult and long. Please do not expect any dramatic turning point anytime soon. What we have finally done is to be on the right way, but far from having a solution to the war or an end to the war. But it's true that if you look back 1 year ago, where we had no unity of the international community, no unity of the region, and no path, no process, no roadmap, no calendar, for sure today we are in a much better place. And this allows us to have a sense of direction and to create the conditions for the talks to start, the roadmap to be implemented, the calendar to be fulfilled. And I believe this is our role as European Union, coordinated with all our member states, those that are sitting at the table and those that are not sitting at the table. That is also why, for me, it is extremely important to continuously put the issue of the Syria crisis on the agenda of the Foreign Affairs Council, to make sure that all the 28 are fully involved in the process, and that where we are sitting there, it's all the European Union present, and there is a constant feedback both ways. And I'm glad that we can do the same with the Parliament, because you know very well, for me, the Parliament is a very important actor of our external action. But this is, I believe, our role, not so much putting conditions or preconditions, but trying to create the conditions for the talks to start and to be productive, in strong cooperation with the United Nations. Many of you have asked questions about the composition of the delegation of the opposition, the time, the modalities, the formats of the talks, whether the talks will happen on Monday next week or will be delayed. We have obviously discussed all of that, not only with the Foreign Affairs Ministers yesterday, but also I discussed these issues personally with Staffan de Mistura just before he debriefed the Security Council yesterday. But let me also say that there is a specific role for the UN Special Envoy, supported by the group, by the support group. But we have, I believe, as European Union, to preserve the role of the United Nations in trying to define the modalities and the time of negotiations that they are going to lead. Also, to guarantee that all the different actors in the region and internationally feel comfortable enough on the fact that the leading role of the UN guarantees all on an equal foot. What it is important for us as Europeans, and what we're making clear, is, as I said in the beginning, that in one way or another, that is in the hands of the UN Special Envoy to define, but in one way or another, we managed to find ways of guaranteeing that the entire Syrian society, all the different Syrian groups, those that were in Riyadh at the conference and those that were not there, provided that they sign up to the political process and they fight against Daesh, al-Nusra and the terrorist groups that are consensually defined as terrorist groups, all of them find their own way of getting into the process and feel ownership. Because many of you said that the key point is having the Syrians decide for the future of the country and also for the present of their country. The Syrians, all the Syrians, meaning also, as I stressed, those that are outside of the country. What is also important is something that our colleague Cozzolino indicated, working on the generations. We are losing generations of Syrians. They're losing their lives, they're losing their education, they're losing their hope. And this is something that Syria and the region can pay for not just years, but decades to come. This is also why we are investing a lot of our finance, our money, but also our work in education programs, because we have to guarantee that a country that had a very high level of education for the overall population manages to continue to invest in its own future, because when time will come that we will have to work on the reconstruction of the country, we will have to have generations of Syrians ready to engage in a very difficult process of material and non-material rebuilding of the country. So the knowledges, the competences, the experiences, the education of entire generations has to be taken care of now, because otherwise we will have serious problems 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Also in terms of radicalization, because young generations that are experiencing today only war, conflict, starvation and life in refugee camps in the best option might not be necessarily the best citizens of tomorrow. So this is clearly not only a humanitarian must, but also a clear interest that we have in investing also in our own security and stability for the future. Let me finish by saying many questions were raised related to debates that we will have either later tonight, the tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran and the regional developments linked to that, the situation in Turkey, situation of religious minorities starting from Christians, all things on which we have debates today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. And here, let me stress again one thing that I shared with you already in the past. I enjoy very much spending time with you and exchanging views, and I find it extremely useful for my work back both in the Commission or in the Council as a European Union High Representative. But I would suggest, as a former member of Parliament, not a European one but a national one, I would humbly suggest that you find a way of defining a calendar for foreign policy debates that manages to focus on some key issues, that manages also to communicate to the outside world that the Parliament is focusing on the foreign affairs priorities month after month. This is an humble suggestion that maybe we could find a way of organising our works in order not to repeat similar discussions over the 2 or 3 days that we spend together every month. Let me finish with one point. Someone raised it, a very specific point, the support to Jordan in relation to trade. Let me say that we discussed this at length yesterday with Nasser Judeh, the Foreign Minister of Jordan, in a bilateral meeting, and with the Foreign Affairs Council. I had the honour and the pleasure to discuss this with Her Majesty, the Queen of Jordan, last week in Brussels. This is going to be a proposal that I will put forward to support Jordan not only through financial support, but also with some exceptional and temporary and targeted measures to increase their and facilitate their trade with the European Union. Because they are developing, in view of the London conference, a very, I think, creative and ambitious plan to create job opportunities together for Jordanians and Syrian refugees. That, I believe, is going to be extremely important to make it sustainable in the mid-term, in the long term, the integration of the Syrian refugees in the host communities without creating a conflict in these host communities, because the perspective of hosting Syrians in large numbers for a long time in a country that is surrounded by crisis and is not rich of natural resources in a particular way might create social or economic conflicts that we need to prevent. So I hope we can count on the support of this Parliament to work in this direction as well, not only financial support, direct support to the hosting of refugees and the protection of refugees in the case of Jordan, but also trade measures that can help in the mid-term Jordan to invest in job creation and economic investment. I will finish here, thanking you very much for the inputs that to me are extremely precious to the way ahead. Again, hoping that the way forward will be as encouraging as it has been in these last 3-4 months, and that we will manage in partnership with our main friends and partners in the region and on a global level to facilitate and move forward this very difficult process, but again, finally, I think on the right track. Thank you.
Keskustelu on päättynyt. Olen vastaanottanut ECR-ryhmältä pyynnön, joka koskee nimityksiä parlamentin valiokuntiin. Nämä nimitykset kirjataan tämän istunnon pöytäkirjaan ja nimitykset katsotaan vahvistetuiksi, ellei vastalauseita esitetä ennen tämän pöytäkirjan hyväksymistä.